Hello, and welcome to this live painting demo tonight, Tuesday, December 11th. And I am doing a portrait. This one's a commission of three small portraits from the same family. This one is of Eliana rather, and I am going to get on my way. Please let me know if who's watching, where you're watching from. Lets me know that there's actually someone out there, and I'm just not talking to myself um, over dead air. And also, I've been plagued with technical issues the last few. I've had screen freezes, has and actually had a one problem where my phone wasn't charging properly, and the phone died right in the middle of the stream, and was able to get it running twice. It died twice. So, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump right in here. Oh, I see Angela, my coworker here. Um, so at least there's her and a few others. Great. So let me just see if I can straighten the screen out. Something also funky is going on with my computer. Usually it has the time in the upper right hand edge of the monitor, and that seems to have disappeared. So without restarting my computer, I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to know what time it is except for looking at the wall clock in my kitchen. So I'm going to start right into measuring and drawing. I'm not going to put her earbuds in. I'm going to take those out, and that's usually the way people like it. If they're hiring me to do commission. If it's not a commission, then I can just do whatever I feel like. Um, I'm just have a little bit of the solvent on the brush, and that's enough to see my lines here. Make sure that I give her enough forehead here. It's been a while since I've worked on an 8 by 10. It's a lot easier in a way than working on a much larger piece because I can see everything at once in my monitor, and all the relationships to the edges of the panel are easy to see, and then I can go and measure very quickly from all the sides. Jean is here. Hi, everybody. Oh, regards from Brazil. I haven't had anyone viewing from Brazil yet, I think. Or maybe I'm not sure. You may have been watching a different time. Where in Brazil are you? Just out of curiosity. My wife often travels to Brazil, so um, she was in Belo Horizonte last year and maybe has spent some time in Sao Paulo, I think, recently. And oh, Tushar is tuning in from India, and then same question: where in India? Am I? Can you guys see that wash? Is it if I'm making it dark enough that you can actually see it on the phone? I can start to mix a little bit of a color, just sort of a gray base, just to start putting in a little more definite marks. Um, it means oh, Valente is the name of the town. Okay, means brave. I would have guessed that. Okay, again, go back to my measuring. I'm a good drawer, but at the same time, without measuring, you can be pretty far off. See, I have her eye, a whole eye distance too high. I'm just gonna mark that out and then put her eye lower here. For a while I tried doing the drawing with pencil, and I found that very frustrating. So now I'm back to drawing with the paint, my initial lay-in. And I want to see where the base of her nose is. Her Okay, so that's actually much lower than where I have it drawn. So I must have a couple other measurements off too. So let's again check where the chin is. Have the chin about in the right place at least. Something a little more like that. Lips, she has kind of this all knowing smile, so I want to make sure I get that um, correct. Mona Lisa smile going on there. So Tushar says there is a state called Karn, Karnataka. Okay, I'll have to look it up later. I think I should start making a map with pins of all the places people have watched my demos from. That would be kind of interesting. I had someone who wasn't going to be able to watch pre ask a question, which is um, to talk a little bit about the brushes I'm using and when I switch from one brush to another and explain why. So this is actually, I'm going to switch right now because I have this nice flat brush which is good for later on in the painting, and I'm sort of abusing it by um, scrubbing in the drawing. So what I'm looking for right now is just a my round bristle brush is somewhere. Oh yeah, this one. This is really good for initial drawing. It just has really stiff hairs and it is about the size of a, um, I guess maybe it's a number six, number four, no, yeah, number six or number eight. Is that really six? Maybe it's a four. Anyway, so it gives me a thick enough line I can see it and can get enough indication there. Need just a little more liquid on the brush there. And let's get some of that blue in the eye. And again, want to do a little bit of measuring. That's good. The height of the eye. And at some point I'm going to have to look very closely at the interrelationships between the landmarks there. It can't just be all measuring from the edges. Everything has to line up for it to look right. Okay, and then do the outline of her hair. See where that's sort of breaking in. Her top of her head's very close to the edge, just breaking in a little bit. And I did put an imaginary ear here, but it's not, we're not really seeing the whole thing. We're just seeing a piece of it. Okay, so between her smile and her slightly raised eyebrows, she is really exuding a lot of confidence. She's sort of saying like, um, don't like I know it, you don't. I told you so kind of look. I know I told you so, but it's like, come on, I, you should know that. It helps to get kind of in the mindset of the person that you're drawing. At least tell yourself a story so that you can kind of feel the emotion of what they're feeling. You can even, I even do this sometimes as I make the face that they're making, the expression, so I start to feel it. And you know if some of your measurements are off or you're not really getting some of the right gestures in the face because then it's not reading that emotion. Okay, so Tushar says, "Do you know Bangalore?
Yeah, actually, I haven't been to India, but my wife, she's a world traveler, since she does a lot of traveling for work, and so she has been to Bangalore quite a few times. And Alper, how long have you been painting? How much time do you take to master your technique?
So that's kind of interesting story is that I've been painting for about 30 years. It's 30 years since I really started. Um, Gotten enough skill during art school to really say that I was painting. And over that time, my painting career has kind of gone through a lot of ups and downs, and especially my head study portraiture work. Um, I people's faces are what I'm most interested in, but I've also done a lot of other types of painting, still life and a lot of landscape work. But painting faces really is my true love. But even though I like it and enjoy it, doesn't mean that I always had enough skill to not feel frustrated about it and to give up for long periods of time. And it's only in the last couple years that I've dedicated quite a bit of time to really um, trying to understand it, trying to better understand the materials that I was using and how to work in a way that made sense for the way I think and my natural process. And so I have to say it's only the last 2 or 3 years that I've been able to really do the kind of level of work that I'm doing now. Or even in only in the last 2 years, I can look back and say, oh yeah, I can see where all that time and effort just trying to get a better understanding where it's just started to pay off. So even though, I've been painting for a long time, it's really the last few years that I've gotten to a level of proficiency where I feel a little more comfortable with what I'm doing. So I'm just like scrubbing in a little bit of color here. I'm not really putting in really confident brush strokes yet. I'm just kind of feeling my way through. I'll go back and measure at some point. But in the end, I want really clean, larger brush strokes that have a little more confidence to them. It's okay if you start out slowly in that direction, but eventually you want to get there. Okay, and sure says, yeah, Bangalore is in uh, Karnataka. I live 9 hours away from it. 9 hours. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe in India that's close. 9 hours sounds like a long way away, but it may be just like 150 miles with a really bad road or something like that. So something looks a little off in my drawing, but it's actually not that far. This distance looks a lot shorter on the screen than it does on the panel. Let's see if I adjust her tip of her nose a little bit. I don't have it quite low enough. And she's got a little bit of kind of greenish, coolish shadow going on there. It's got a little green or yellow on the brush. At some point, I'm gonna have to stop and put out a little more paint. I can see my oranges and yellows are a little bit dried up on the palette. So I'm painting what's called sight size, meaning the reference is the same size in my vision as the painting itself, so I can look back and forth quickly. I don't have to measure everything. Whereas if you do a scaled version of your reference, you have to take a relative measurement of one part to the other, and you don't have to do this when you're doing site size. And that's my favorite way of working is site size. And occasionally I'll change the scale in Photoshop so I can see the whole image at once, or kind of see it in almost like looking at it from further away. So the the advantages of working in Photoshop. Um, okay, just gonna keep on going. The screen hasn't frozen yet, so I'm very happy about that. Okay, so her head is pulled forward, so that's part of her gesture here that her neck is extended. You don't really see the back of her neck, but you can imagine it, sort of the back of it at this angle too. But the hair is cutting over that. Okay, so this is where I need to start to get a little bit bigger brush. Let me just double check some of my measurements here. That looks right. The other eye looks right. The tip of the nose is pretty good. The lips, I'll measure that from the bottom. Split in the lips. And the corner of the mouth is pretty good. Comes out maybe a little bit further, which means there's a little more face over here than I've given her. And then the mouth comes out just a little bit further here. Okay. And this all has to be a little bit flatter. The her upper lip comes more straight across like that. Okay, so I'm gonna leap to a this something flat brush. This is was on sale. The whole sets of the Royal Langnickel brushes. They ended up being about $1 a piece. Um, that's the brush there, with shorter blue handles. I used to think that every brush I wanted a longer handled brush, but it's not. Doesn't bother me to use shorter handle brushes either. Um, in a way, you kind of have a little more control. It's kind of forces you to be a little bit more painterly if you're holding a long handled brush and you're sort of way back on it. It's almost like having a baseball bat where you're using the full bat, as opposed to trying to bunt. But just most of my action here is in the wrist and not the whole arm. Sorry, I know there's whole arm people out there, especially some of those draftsmen, some drawers that insist that you use the whole arm. Can't really tell you what I do most of the time because I'm not really thinking about it. And I'm still not putting a whole lot of paint down. I'm just moving kind of the washes around. So if I'm not going to get to a finished painting this way because it's not, um, I'm not being, what's the word? Not being direct enough with the paint. I'm just kind of scumbling around a little. This is almost like if I were using watercolors right now. This is about the. I usually go a little bit thicker. I like my paint to be about the consistency of milk or cream. Right now it's coming down slightly transparent because how thin I'm working at the moment. You can still see I have the tip of her nose not quite long enough yet. Let's get a little bit of white in there so I can start to play with that. Okay. Okay. Still I'm really still just in the drawing phase, even though it's starting to look like a painting. I'm just drawing where everything is going. Doesn't hurt me to stay in this mode for a long time so that when I get down to putting in some more definite finishing strokes, I know I'm putting them down in the right place. Okay, and this is where I need to start thinking about the shape of forms in the face. So thinking about this cheek, how it's pointing this way and it's curving around, and how this part on the top is getting more of the light than the part turned underneath, so that as I paint it, it is going to start to take on some volume. I think one of the biggest mistakes that painters will make is allowing the forms to flatten out by not really getting into a 3D mode. And something I struggle with, I have to say, that I'm always having to think about it. Like, what? I'm just painting shape to shape, but am I really looking to see how those things interconnect and the volume that it's trying to create? Okay, I'm going to put in the shadow underneath her nose, and if I have to say a color, it's sort of a grayish, yellowish green, orange green. Is there such thing as an orange green? I know it's one of my favorite color combinations to mix orange with the green to get kind of a strange, murky color, kind of more olivey. I used to have olive green on my palette, but I took it out because I could just get there with so many other colors that I decided that I didn't want it taking up room in my palette anymore. I've removed some other colors over in the recent years. I've taken out all of the siennas and umbers off my palette. I'm preferring transparent darks to earth tones, which are more opaque and can get a little bit chalky more easily. So I have to think about that upper eyelid here. If you look at it, it's light in the middle and then gets darker on the sides, and that's what's going to help it look like it's curving in space if I think about it that way. I'll get a little bit more white on the palette, and then the folds of flesh above her eyelid right here. This it's gonna there's a crease there generally, and then it's pointing down, and then it curves up. Right up here is pointing upward, so that is catching the light up here. So if I paint a smooth gradation there, then you're going to start to feel that curve of it turning from pointing up to pointing down. And I can see I don't have quite enough yellow going on, so I'm going to throw a bunch into my little pool of color so that there's more yellows in my lights there. Okay, so this is starting to take shape, and again, I haven't done anything definitive yet in terms of being committal about brushstrokes. Let's get some of the black in here that's going to be appearing later. And so I'm using a very transparent black. It's called chromatic black. This is a gambling color. It's made by mixing phthalo emerald and quinacridone red. They are perfect complements, and together they're both highly transparent and have very high tinting strengths, meaning they're extremely colorful. But you mix the two together in the right proportion, and you get a very convincing black, even though they're just made out of two very bright colors. It's kind of an interesting idea, and it's makes a lot of those neo-impressionists happy because they can use a black that's not really black. There might be some purists out there that say, well, you really shouldn't use that either because the colors are highly combined, and so they have less less radiance, I guess you would say. There's less interaction between the colors that are making up that color. Okay. My sister is here watching, and she says that I'm amazing. Well, she's pretty amazing too. She's also an artist. She was recently
featured in documentary. You don't mind if I talk about you, Mindy, since you're here? Um, she was the subject of a documentary that was filmed over the last few years, and it won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Short. That was kind of a really neat surprise that it won. We definitely weren't expecting that, and um, we were all jumping up and down like crazy when they read it. The film is called "Heaven is a Traffic Jam on the 405," and that's because Mindy likes being in traffic jams, unlike the rest of us. Anyway, it's a good film. It's worth watching. It's maybe costs $5 or $6 on Google Play and on I think Amazon Prime. Maybe if I saw that the high definition was $10. Maybe once you click the purchase button, it gives you a choice of choosing standard definition, which may be a little bit cheaper. Anyway, it's her artwork is amazing, and it's an amazing story. And I guess it um, wouldn't have won the Academy Award if it wasn't. And so I guess all I can say is it's worth the few dollars to go ahead and watch it, and or at least watch the trailer and see if it's something that interests you. Okay, still not. I'm still not. I'm kind of working my way around, not putting down um, any committal brushstrokes at this point. Um, Not sure why. Sometimes I come in with really bold strokes right from the beginning, and maybe I'm not feeling that confident today. Okay, in her ear, let's get a measurement there. The Ooh, nailed it. Um, okay, ear is right in there. Again, I'm not going to put in the earbuds. Okay, jeez, I am capturing that all-knowing look. It's every parent knows that look really well. It's when your kid gets smarter than you, and then they say, "Oh, Dad, oh, Mom, obviously, obvs." Okay, so um, and then when I say stuff like that, my son goes, "Dad, no, just no, stop, stop right now." Okay, so the chin is looking a little bit long, so I'm gonna carve that back a little, but then it comes up there. I'm gonna give her that highlight. Oops, gotta clean my brush a little bit better here. If anyone follows me on Instagram, they'll notice that I posted a picture of some of my curled brushes that comes from a bad habit I have of leaving my as I change brushes, I leave the other brushes that I'm not using sitting in the solvent and resting on their tips. And so what happens is eventually, especially the detail brushes, will start to get all curled, and then they become very ineffective as detail brushes because you're trying to paint straight on and the tip is like curled at a 90-degree angle. Um, so that's makes it very hard to work that way. So now I'm trying to be very conscious about never leaving my brushes in the solvent. I wipe them off and I'll put them down, and um, so that they don't curl, that they keep their shape. Or at least I get to see whether they do hold up much better if I'm very good about it. And maybe this is break. Um, we're getting near New Year's resolution time, so maybe this is the time I start to think about um,
breaking old bad habits. So I'm not quite orange enough in her forehead here. I can kind of push more of that color and go a little bit pinker right here. So something I've been thinking about is that I could really just copy all the little shapes here in the photo, or I can think kind of the larger masses that I'm painting and make sure that I'm getting the feel of those masses. And so if I think about the forehead as just being kind of a dome that curves around, then I want to have brush strokes and values that kind of match that. So if I start off with one side that has this darker olivey tone, and I gotta go a little more orange on that. Let's see. Probably orange and black is going to get me closer to that color. Let's see. Yeah, something like that. But if I put down that color and then next to it go a little bit lighter and redder, and then next to that I have a little bit lighter color, and I'm moving across here and I have the right shapes and thinking about the form, this getting lighter on top as I move around, that as I get that painted in, it will start to be a very convincing form because I'm letting the values of the paint and the colors tell the story about how the form is wrapping around. And then at the very top here, because it is sort of like a ball shape, there's going to be the highlight here that's going to be where the light is both lighting the whole top of the head and also the highlight where the light is reflecting off the top of her head. Those are actually two different things, and they're generally in different places, but they're very close to the same place on in this photo. So they can be kind of right on top of each other to give you the lightest light in her face. My yellow is all dried up. I'm trying to get a little bit of yellow with the white just to make it a little bit warmer, maybe a touch of orange. So this is, I'm just going to go pure white right there. What the heck? So this is where you need a little bit of a softer brush if you want the paint to sit on top of already wet paint that's down there. So I have this bigger shape here, and I'll talk about a little bit about the brush hair stiffness and softness later, but I have this bigger shape here, but I also have these smaller shapes above the eyebrows where I have the brow ridge here that's doing something separate, and the same on this side, which has a little more orange and pinks in it. So I have that shape, those shapes there. And then the underneath, there's a little bit of a turn down here, so it's not really that evident here, but I know it's there, so I can think about that turning a little bit further down. So right now I'm not looking so much at the smaller, trying to get those smaller shapes that are in the forehead. I'm really thinking hard about that overall shape to make sure that I'm capturing that, and because I really want that to be convincing. And I think it is starting to get there. If I look, I can just add a little more lighter pinks coming around here. And her eyes are looking a little droopy there, her under the area underneath her eyes. So I have to clean up some of those shapes. I don't know if you guys are trying to follow what I'm saying, whether you understand that or not, but that's sort of what I've been focusing on lately. Let's give her a little bit more red in the tip of her nose, not Rudolph red, but kind of a little more appropriate for how we tend to have more color, reddish color on the tips of our nose and on our cheeks. So she's just getting a little bit more red right here on the underside of her cheeks there. Although you're not really seeing too much there, but here a little bit. Not great lighting in this photo, but I'm just gonna go with what I know. And that's why I had a paint teacher that says, "Don't paint what you see, paint what you know." And usually it's what you see is what you want to paint. Okay, and I'm feeling like the nose, I need it to be pointed a little further down. That the distance between the nostril and the base of her nose is a little bit closer than what I had it painted. It's got a little more committal with the other nostril here. It's very thin, comes down. Okay, that's looking a little better. I think this has to come further out to the side. So this is where little distances make a big difference in the likeness and the expression. So it's worth moving things around, adjusting them until they look right. And a lot of times you can't tell if they're right until you put them down. Take a guess at something and then move it to where it needs to go after that. Okay, so I'm starting to get a little thicker of the paint now as I go. I'm feeling a little more comfortable that I know where things are. And again, I'm missing some colors on my palette, so I do have to stop at some point and make sure I get those in before it hurts me a little bit too much because I don't have the colors down that I need to work with. Okay, I'm trying to change that cheek shape a little bit. She has the crease um, of hers. I don't know what that is, zygomatic arch or the upper lip, and I have to get a little bit of mixture of black and red there to get that. There we go. So I can be a little bit more aggressive there. And then I need in the philtrum of her nose, that little grooved area, I need to get some of that shadow and color going. And then I really want to get an accent here that's at the base of the nose to really get it to come forward. It's these things I used to leave out of paintings. I didn't understand, or I wasn't really focused on it, but it's those things that really, if you really want the forms and um, the forms to turn properly in space, you really got to get those very fine accents in there that help define the form. Otherwise, you end up with a very soft painting that um, is feels kind of nondescript, blurred and out of focus because you're not really getting the accents in there. Once had a teacher say to me, "Where are the accents?" I didn't know what he really meant at the time, but I started to figure it out. Like, oh, I'm doing a whole painting and I'm not putting in a whole part of the what should be seeing up there. Okay, so I'm missing. She has quite a bit of color on the far side of her nose, right here, and then she has almost going to white right here. Comes all the way down the nose. And I'm going to have to come back in and restate this several times because I need to be able to get to pure white. And again, that's where a softer brush helps. I'm going to try to get this light in the forehead too. The softer brush, again, allows you to lay thicker paint over thinner paint without it mixing too much. Okay, well, I got that crease in the cheek, but I didn't get the far edge of her nostril there. So it just was sort of missing. So one other thing that I used to do, I guess it was kind of a magical thinking that things would show. I just imagine that things would show up in the painting if I just dabbled around enough. That things that um, I weren't painting directly would eventually show up. And I found that that doesn't really work. That you have to be intentional about everything that you put into the painting if you want it to be part of the painting. It just doesn't show up by itself. You might get lucky with a few brushstrokes that you're kind of capturing little pieces that you're not really focused on. But in my experience, if you want something to show up in the painting, you got to paint it in. Um, I don't know why it took me so long to figure that out, but I kind of felt like if you, like John Singer Sargent, you just sort of take these big swings at everything, that the little details would somehow figure out where they needed to be. And it doesn't work like that. So, for example, this highlight here that shows up in the lips, I'm putting that in. But I didn't put the color in around it, so that's just not going to show up by itself. I have to actually put it in. Okay, keep on going here. So around the chin, the jaw, there's going to be a lot more yellow and green color just naturally. That's just natural coloration of our faces. And so it's true with her face too, that she has more yellows and greens around her, the the area around her mouth. Let's improve the line of her profile. So you can see I'm not still not getting the tip of the nose right. I'm showing too much of the far side of the nose, so it doesn't look like it's pointing in the right direction. So I really do have to get it. See how small this shape is in here and how big I have it. So I really need the nose to be more, really over much more. I've got to be a little more forceful. And I have no problem moving it over. I don't care how long I had spent painting it in the wrong place. It's only going to get to the right place if I move it over. Okay, so I'm doing that now. And something's still not right. So I'm going to work on this eye area until I can figure out where the cheek and some of those other shapes around it go. Because without really getting the rest of the eye in, I'm not really seeing it yet. Okay. Okay. So, and now I have to put in her lower lid. That's part of what's missing that I'm having a hard time seeing. So you can see actually really do have the highlight of the nose in really the wrong place. It's better that I figured that out now. So I'm going to just try to shove it over. Repaint in the side of her nose. Come on. And then the highlight on her nose is going to be over here further. And then the far side of her nose that's moving away from us quickly in space. What I mean is that as it's turning, it's almost turned completely away from us. Okay, so that's better. And then her nostril isn't quite that high. Okay, that's feeling a little better. So then her nostril, far nostril comes down, this comes over, and then the other one starts over further. Okay, that's starting to look better. So I'm starting to put in a little more definite marks. That's just for the fun of it. I'm going to throw in this little highlight here in the eye. The, that'll give me a little bit more sense of the reflective quality of the eye if I can finally get it to take there. And then the swoop of her eyelid right here. Now I can finally put in the darks and the lights of her upper eyelid. So as soon as I can find a mixture of color that I think is close. Okay, so now I can, on top of that, put in my white. And then I'm missing the dark of the mass of tissue that's above. I don't even know what to call that. That's her. It's not quite her upper lid. It's really more the underside of her brow. See, that's how good my vocabulary of anatomy is. Just the stuff above her eye. That's why I've never been able to teach in a well, I have actually taught in a university in Ecuador, but in one of these local art schools because I have to know the name of all the things that I'm painting. It's like I know what they look like and I know the shape of them and I know how they all connect together, but don't always know the name. I mean, I do know some, but the orbital, the zygomatic arch, the philtrum, all that stuff. But it's more about having kind of a mental guide of the shape and the rhythm of things in the face. You can learn all the names you want, but it's not going to get you there unless you know what they look like and feel like. So that's just me being preachy. Okay, and I want to get the hollow of the cheek here. Start to get a feeling of that as soon as I can get the right color in there. Again, I'm not painting her earbuds, so I'm just going to leave those out. She does have a little, looks like a little diamond earring, so I'll put something in there that's close to what I think it would look, what it looks like. And then there's lots of transitions going on that I have too hard an edge on, and by softening those up, I can really help the painting on a lot. Okay, so make sure I want to get the feel of this top of the nose coming down and then the side of the nose. And then the underside of the brow here goes darker and redder. There we go. And then the other side, I'm missing all the deeper shadows there that are on that side. And then the upper brow is a little bit lighter, but not as light as I had it. Okay, so let's get this line a little bit better along the forehead. And I have the turn of her, the bridge of her nose a little bit too high. So I'm bringing that down a little. Okay, let's keep on going.
Let me see.
We're about an hour in and got a pretty good start going here. Let's get some more of that olive green color. Maybe I will put olive green back in my palette. I don't know. I or maybe sap green. That's another one that I took out, and so I'm left with just really um, phthalo emerald is my only green on the palette, and so sometimes that slows me down a little bit. Okay, so I am going to um, pull out my color and recharge my palette here a little bit because I'm working against myself and I'm not really getting enough paint on the brush because I don't have enough paint on my palette. So gonna get some white on there. Gonna hunt down my yellow and orange. And where are you? So there's the orange. I'm waiting for there to be a 40% sale on Gamblin paint. They'll probably not have it if they hear me saying that. Oh, that guy's waiting for the sale. He doesn't. I mean, there's not guaranteed there will be a sale, but periodically through the year they do drop their prices. So sometimes I um, am strategic about it and I buy a lot of colors in anticipation of running out before I do run out so that I can get a little bit better price. I tend to buy most of my stuff on Dick Blick. Is has pretty good pricing. I buy all my panels on there. I buy my um, well, when Gamblin has a sale on their artist oil color, it's the same price everywhere in all the art stores and all the online stores. They have essentially the same pricing. So I know if I go walk into Dick Blick or Plaza Arts locally here, that I'll get the same prices that if I bought it on Dick Blick online or Jerry's Artorama or one of those others. Okay, let me see. I have yellow, orange, and I kind of feel like I need more my naphtha red. I'm okay on my quinacridone for now. So the colors that I use on my palette, these are all high key colors. That means that they're very intense colors. They hold their color well when mixed with white and other colors. And that allows me to get the maximum amount of color as needed. It's not that I'm putting in the strongest color with every brushstroke, but where I do need to have a very strong color, like I just was doing a painting where the shirt that the young woman was is wearing is kind of this very intense blue. Well, the fact that I have phthalo blue and ultramarine blue on my palette allows me to at least try to approximate that color. If I had some other weaker blues, then I wouldn't be able to get there necessarily. And so, and the same with colors in the flesh tones that often get are very light, have a lot of white mixed in them. If they're not, see, I left my brush sitting in the solvent there. But if I mix a lot of white, white tends to pull a lot of color out of the mixture. It goes dull and pale very quickly. If you have a high key color, then you can maintain some of the intensity of the color even when there's a lot of white mixed with it. And so there's a method to my madness, that there's a reason why I have all these high key colors on my palette. Not that I want to paint like Peter Max or Leroy Neiman or something like that, where everything in the whole painting is very intense. I just want to be able to have the reach of color, to be able to get a color as I need it, and not. Um, I mean, the other approach, some people paint with limited palettes and they're able to get beautiful color relationships, but at the same time, they can't get certain colors. They just have to depend on those color relationships to get the sense of intensity of color. It's kind of a completely more of a perceptual approach to color than what I'm doing right here. I'm trying to match, in a sense, the colors that I'm seeing. And I want, if I'm seeing a very intense color, I want to match that. The way the Impressionists painted is that they would use color differences, warm against cool, to try to get the sense of intensity of light. So their need for color intensity is more about reproducing the sensation of light than what I'm doing here. And okay, so my picture not frozen yet. Good. And I think that my phone is still charging. If you just, I can just good. I but I started at about 80, so if I go for too long, the phone will eventually run out of juice. I don't know. I did change the battery recently. I got a new battery installed in my phone, but it doesn't seem to guarantee that my phone won't run out of charge in the middle of one of these demos. So I did buy a webcam because eventually I do want to use a webcam instead of my phone, but haven't gone through all the technological hurdles to get it to work properly, where the sound and the picture quality are all coming in together. The problem I'm having is something's not quite right about the bit rate, and the picture, the lag is very slow, and the picture quality is rather poor. So not quite there yet. Let's move the bridge of her nose again over, and this side of her nose is got to be over also. No, I'm really struggling with the highlight on the getting it in the right place tonight, but and you can see I don't have the right distance of her brows here. Um, I guess it's her left brow is coming over just a little bit further. And then I'm missing an accent where her lower eyelid is coming running into the cheek there, and there's a little bit of a transitional um, curve there. What am I trying to say? Transitional um, area between the cheek and the lower eyelid. So I want to make sure that I'm getting that in the right color too. And then her has quite a bit of light or a thicker edge on her upper part of her eyelid there. And I'll gonna get the that crease that's right below there. I don't have to make it quite as strong as that it is in the photo. Um, that will help me soften up her features a little bit if I edit a little bit. There's just a little bit of highlight here, just right underneath. And I need to knock that back a little bit. Okay. So you can see what I just did there. I was able to get a very thin line by putting down the line first and then carving it back to being a very thin line. So you don't always have to have a tiny little detail brush um, if you're able to stage your brush strokes so that you can um, sort of edit them down a little bit. Took me a while to figure that one out. I was always hunting for these little tiny triple aught brushes just to get the little detail, and I didn't realize I could use a huge brush and still get tiny little detail. It was just a matter of how you use it. Okay, highlight still has to move. So I can see what's happening. The highlight's starting here more in the middle, and it's getting a little bit closer to the tip of the nose right here. Let's make it just a bit closer. There. Great. Let's take this measurement here so I can feel a little more confident about it. That looks to be spot on. So good. Carve this down a little bit. Okay, missing. I've gone, haven't kept quite light enough on the tip of her nose. There's too many darker reds and colors, and those have to go much lighter. That's the other thing it's taken me a long time to learn is to trust the values that you see, in the sense that you see a form is turning and you kind of exaggerate the values changes to really get that form to turn. And the fact is that you can get form to turn with very subtle value changes. You just have to have the sense of control and a little bit of trust that just the little difference between the two is will get you there. Excuse me. Okay, and let's see if I can get the tip of her nose finally pointing in the right direction. I've been really struggling with that tonight. To go a lighter pink here. It's part of the problem. And then this nostril is not coming up that high. And cutting into it that way there. That's looking a little bit better. And the accent on the underside of her nostril is just over up a little bit tighter than I have it. So for those of you who are trying to get likenesses, you can see how many tiny little adjustments I'm making to the placement of things. And once I get things more or less right, then the likeness does come out of that. It's not like I'm spending a lot of time thinking about the likeness. I'm just trying to get all the relationships right. That comes from measuring and comparing until you finally get towards the end of the painting and all those things start to come together. Okay. I don't know if my feed is working. Everyone's very quiet tonight, so um, my comments. So if anyone has a comment, let me, don't be shy. Okay, let's work a little bit on her far eye because it's still not feeling it yet. Okay, and I think the tip of her nose still has to come down a little bit more. Really struggling with the nose. Okay, that's very committal, that highlight there. I know that's a little bit too much contrast here, but it really does help me see it. Like the paint just sitting on top is a good way of getting something to look like a highlight. That it looks like the light just reflecting off the surface if it just sits right on top of the other paint. Okay, can adjust that nostril again and get that little darker shape that's just right above the corner of the nostril there. Let's try that again. Right there. And not giving her enough bridge to her nose too. So this comes out a little bit. It's very subtle, but then it comes back, and I was not painting that in at all. And then it comes back up here higher. There we go. That's making a difference, that little subtle thing. And that's part of what I was trying to say before. Sometimes it's those little subtle variations and changes that will, in the end, make the most difference between it looking right and not. And um, it's a little hard because it's hard to convince your logical brain that that makes sense. But when you do it and it works, you really start to see it and understand it. No one knows what I'm talking about at this point, but that's okay. What I'm trying to say is you have to pay attention to the subtle changes that you see, not just the dramatic ones. Again, we exaggerated that a little bit, but you start to now see that form. You see where the hollow of the cheek starts to cut back a little bit here. Now I have this pink a little bit too light, but you do get the idea. And then something that I see a lot. So when you're painting a lot of faces, you'll see a lot of same elements repeat over and over again, and then that gives you an opportunity to sort of internalize that and make it part of your painting process is to put those elements in. So right here, there you have the cheek shape and the chin shape, and then right here you have, usually it's like a little bit greener or darker transition area that's there. It will have that kind of triangular shape to it. So lots of places where in the face where you'll find like there's a little triangle usually that's right in the where the top of the cheek is and underneath the eyelid. And so you can see it right here, this little triangle. I'm going to paint right on my monitor so you can see it. Um, Wipe it off. But you can see that. So it's really subtle, but because I've seen it so often, I know it's there and I know to look for it. And then I know to paint it in. And then it makes the overall sense of the face, the sense of reality of the face more convincing because you are putting in those little key elements that you know to look for, and that they're helping support all of the elements that you're putting into the face. The same thing with around the corners of the mouth. There'll be this little roundish shape that curves around. And so again, I'm looking for that and then I'm putting it in. It's like that's what I found. It's like when John Singer Sargent painted, things didn't just come together by accident. He had kind of this very complex roadmap in his mind about where all the pieces were and how he wanted them to fit together and how he wanted to paint them. Not just looking and seeing that they're there and then trying to copy it. He really, was sort of like a chess player. Like how do you want to make the moves to get there? Okay, so this the upper lip, I have this edge very sharp. Generally, what happens is towards the middle, this edge will be a little bit sharper, and as you get to the corners of the mouth, that part really softens up. You get a little bit of a darker shape there. And so I'm looking for that. I'm looking for whether that the idea in my head is matching what I see. And if it does, then I can put it down a little more forcefully. Okay, get that shadow in that's cast by her nose. I've got to move the nostril up a little bit higher and cut into it a little bit more. I need that kind of olivey green color again that I no longer have my palette for this darker for the shadow area. It's not quite shadow area, it's just the area of the half tones of the face that isn't catching quite as much light. Then I have a little bit of a stronger red on the underside of, it's pretty dark though, on the underside of this. Now that's way too much intensity, so I really need to get a little bit of black in there. So I'm not afraid of black. Black is my friend. I know a lot of painters that they don't know what to do with black, or they think it's bad or evil or something, or that it'll ruin their painting, but it allows you to do certain things that you can't do with any other color. It allows you to very quickly shade, get a darker version of a color without losing too much intensity. It does, in the case that I just did here, if you mix like yellow and black or orange and black, or even in some cases red and black, it will sort of start to turn it green. And it's actually shifting the color a little bit because of how cool the black is compared to the warm color. And so the color that you're mixing it, even though the black seems like a neutral, actually leans a little bit in one direction. Some painters use that to their advantage, like Zoran would use it to make his, by mixing black and white, he would kind of get kind of a cool tone, and it would help him create a lot of the blues in his paintings. And if you don't believe me that you can get blue without having blue in your palette by just having black and white, then try limited palette sometime where you're painting almost everything in warm tones, and then come in with that gray mixture and tell me if it doesn't look blue. So it's all about relative color too, to try to get some of those color effects. So here I have this highlight. There's a little bit band of light here, very subtle, that comes to that form there. And I want to keep everything, I'm thinking about all my brush strokes kind of moving, emphasizing that dome shape of her forehead. So as I'm stroking, I really do want to try to keep it moving in that direction to really emphasize that shape. And those subtle little lines from the separation of the brush hairs are going to really help move the person's eye around, to really force them to see that the shape that you're trying to recreate, that three-dimensional shape. Of course, you're only painting in two dimensions, but it really fools the eye if you do it right. You're convincing the eye that the form is actually coming out of the surface of the panel or the canvas. Okay, and I need kind of a transition color here. I have the lightest light on the top here, and then it starts to go a little bit darker as it gets near the hairline. Well, actually, there is almost a light white yellow color there, right as it starts to merge into the hairline. And then when it's in the hairline, that's where it starts to subtly get darker, and then it goes much darker. So I'm just trying to see those little transitional colors. Again, if you get that right, then it becomes very convincing. I'm trying to get some of these transitional pinks and reds in here too, in her temple. Yeah, that was just way too dark a color in the wrong spot, kind of fighting the whites that I put down there already. Okay, got to get some reds in here. There we go. Let me get those transitions right there. It's a little bit better. Okay, and then she has this little bit of area of hair right here, has a lot of green in it. Okay, now let's get a lot more of her, well, Let me adjust her. Still really struggling with the tip of this nose. Every time I look at it, it's just not quite right. So I think by the 30th, 40th, or 50th time that I retouch it, maybe even more, that it will start to do the right thing. It's getting there. It's getting there. I'm missing the shadow on the far side still. That's sort of why it looks like the nose is not quite turning right. Okay. So if I get some of these planes right though, then it will sort of force me to see the nose pointing, parts of it pointing in the right direction. So there's several approaches to making form and making little planes of shapes throughout the face is one way. It's a very convincing way of recreating form and space in a painting, is to sort of chisel out every little plane. I know I keep on saying plane, but I don't have a better word for it. They're like little facets. So again, I'm seeing that kind of triangle shape there. I've exaggerated a little bit. I need to soften it up, but I put it in because I know it's there. I knew to look for it, and I found it, and I'm painting it in. Okay, so let's keep on going, adding more white to get that sense of highlight, and try to get that transitional orange color that's there. It's kind of light and bright. This is where I need a very high key color to get that very light but still having a lot of color in it right along here. Yep, it needs to go a bit darker and have a little bit more red in it. I'll get there eventually. Nope. Let's try again. Yep. So this is part of being intentional. Now, if I keep on going in and trying to refine that shape and get it that turn just right, then I'm being very intentional, not just throwing paint down. And again, this accent that tells us that the form has turned away from us very quickly. If I don't put that in, you're not going to get that idea. This fold of the eyelid, another accent. I'm using just the very edge of this flat here to get it, but again, I can do what I said before, which is put in more paint, thicker, and then come in and carve it back to the right thickness. Okay, and get the height of the far part of that eyelid in there. Now I get a little bit of reflected light here, and when I say reflected light, this is a darkish color that's on the dark side of the face that's catching a little bit of light from from the side that fills in the shadow side of the face. Okay, I think, there's elements here. It's starting to look like something or somebody. Let's get the reds on the far side of her forehead. A stronger red along the edge here. Just trying to hesitate not to go too strong. And as I said that, I put in a much too strong red. Okay, and a little more curve here. That's close. Then I'm going to mix up a bunch of color that I see there because there's a pretty big area of that kind of orange, pink, red here that's too light. Okay, and I didn't fully mix that color, so you see stripes, and that can be very attractive having a brushstroke that has multiple colors in it. It it sort of creates a little bit of a wow factor because it requires so much pre-thinking in the brushstroke to get it. Okay, and I am getting now starting to see that transition a little bit better along the hairline. So maybe a little bit too fancy, but it reads, so I'm going to keep it in there for now. And then I need a transitional color here. I'm just going to blend a little bit, but I need like a greener, a little bit darker color. Okay, so the shape of the forehead's starting to read quite a bit better. Oops. Need a lighter area here. And then it does go a bit darker right about there. Need a little bit more paint on my brush. I can't just still push colors around if I want it to look committed. If I want to be committed. Okay, and it needs again sort of a middle pink up here. More white, more paint. There, that's better. More like it, and then I gotta go stronger red here. Okay, so smooth out some of those transitions. Can try to keep some of this highlight very geometric. Got to pull her cheek down a little bit lower here. Okay, now I'm starting to see those shapes, especially with the well-placed highlights. Really does look like it's bulging out, and that's what I want.
Okay, I see some new comments. Let me see. Elephant Blues. Any chance your subjects you paint actually watch your demo? Well, I hope so. I hope that Eliana is watching.
Tonight. Her mom said that she is an artist and that she was going to tell her that I'm painting her. So I hope she's here watching and just being very quiet. Um, and
So, yes, I think so. Other people have watched me paint them before. And Michael says it's so instructional to hear and watch you both struggle and then find various elements of her face. You always pull it together so well.
well, thank you. Just going to smooth this transition here too. So I don't want to over blend, but I do want to where I put down one brush stroke against another, and they're really too far apart from where they really are in the resource. What am I in the reference? I'm losing my words again. Um, then I can kind of soften it in a few different ways. One is I just can come over it with a little bit of a dry brush over the edge where the two meet. So you can see like right here, there's a one strong color and another strong color, and there's a hard edge in between. Well, I can come back over with this with the soft brush and really knock down that edge, make it much softer edge. Or I can come in with a third color in between the two and create another transitional color to get it. So um, then there's the over blending where you just like you smooth everything down 100 times until you can't really see where one ends and the other begins. And that's fine, but if you do that too much, you do get kind of a muddiness look, kind of an undefined look to the whole painting, and you do want to avoid that. Then you'll start to look like one of those mall portrait artists, the ones that advertise in the mall, and where everything looks super soft and there's no variation of color or values in the face. Okay, how are we doing there? So, gonna put a little more light here on the front part of the lip. That's gonna help it turn a little in space. And then this comes forward a little bit into the nostril. I have too much white on the paintbrush there, but I can pull this shape down around. And then I tend to exaggerate this a little bit. Maybe it's the illustrator in me, but I'll see like the reflected light usually along the edge. That's kind of a bluish color. If I can go kind of a bluish white. I tend to go a little neon sometimes with this little bit of reflected light, um, but it really does help the whole thing pop if you get it right. Okay, and I have to get the form of the lower lip right. It's just not quite the right shape yet. So let's see if I can get that. Pull it down just a little bit, and then I'm getting that darker red that's along the lower edge here. That's better, and then I'm just going to throw in the highlight there for good luck. Pull it down a little bit. Okay, now that's starting to read. That separation in her mouth is a little bit thinner, tighter than what I have it. I'm going to come up against it with a light pink. And then this little shape of the philtrum is thinner than what I've painted. Let's pull the tip of her nose down just slightly. Let's pull it over just a little bit. There we go. And then I want this pink in here. I just need it to be a little bit lighter, but still have quite a bit of color in it. So I have to make sure that I'm getting clean enough mixture of paint there. A little more orange in it. There we go. Did I get it? It's pretty close to that. And then it gets lighter right up along this edge here. Okay, now let me see how good the color is that you guys are seeing. I'm bringing my video right over here. You'll get this sort of, um, there's a little bit of delay here, but you'll get multiple images inside of images here in a second. It's a little fun with the camera. Okay, but it helps me see if I look at this color of the YouTube view against my resource, I can see how good the color is that you guys are seeing. And it's not too bad. Um, there's not too much color shifting going on. Let's get a little bit of this highlight as it moves up the eyelid there. So if I look at this, there's a light here. It comes down. You're seeing it again here. You're seeing it on this lower lid. I don't have that painted in yet, where you're seeing it right here. So, but it sort of follows a line here if you put it in the right place. It's sort of like when you see the sun reflecting in water at the ocean. It all lines up. The reflection lines up with where the sun is in the sky. So it's kind of the same thing with this. You have your light here, and if you think of the head as sort of an egg, that light is following a line all the way down. And I should move this highlight over more because if I'm going to follow that whole line of thinking, it's over just a little bit. And again, you're going to get just a little hints of it here as the face curves is curving under and a little bit there. So, but thinking in that way really helps us improve the sense of volume and form. And if I can wrap this far cheek around by making it darker, that'll also help. I just have to mix the right color in there. So, is that darker? Yeah, so if I'm going darker, let's go darker, darker. At first it won't look right. It looks like you're just pushing it way too dark, but as you get the most of it filled in, it will start to look right. And that will assist greatly in helping turn the form of the head. And also help the nose come forward a little bit more too. And that may have been part of my problem too, getting the tip to read correctly is just not having the colors around it correct. Okay, getting there. So I want this reds and pinks in the side of the nose. I want it to be more subtle. I want it to be lighter and whiter, but not as light as the highlight. I just need it to be lighter. If you start to get all those values right, then the flesh tones and everything else becomes a lot more convincing. So something's not quite right here. This, see, because I have this distance, I have it almost twice what that distance is. So I either have the eye too low or the tip of the nose, eye too high or the tip of the nose too low or something, some measurement is off there. So I have to maybe have to move her eye down a little bit. That's probably the case. And I'm not afraid of that. I have no problem moving an eye. I used to be a lot more um, hesitant about it, thinking that, oh, well, if I just do X, Y, or Z and move other things around, I don't have to repaint the eye. And the fact of the matter is, just repaint it. You'll get good at repainting it if you just do it often enough. And move this pupil, I mean the iris down a little bit. And then I need the white that goes underneath the eye here. Just ruthless here, just paint right over what I've already painted. And then I'll find out later, oh, it was in the right place. I just was seeing it wrong or measuring it wrong, but no. Just gotta go for it. If it's in the wrong place still, I'll move it back up. I don't care. Okay, trying to mix this. The color of the whiter of our eyes has a little more green in it than I've been mixing. Her eyelid also has to swoop down a little bit more. Okay, so now if I paint her underlid, um, with respect to the eye, now this distance will be more correct, be more accurate, I should say. Okay, yep, that's a little bit better. do have a skinny little highlight, reflected light, I mean here along the far edge of the nose. It's almost not worth putting in because it's so thin and soft. But I think that's part of what's helping the nose read correctly, is getting that right. Okay, we're about an hour and a half in. We're doing pretty well so far. The form is coming out. It has that nice painterly look still, as long as I don't start getting too tight on it. And let's start putting in some of the dark hair around her face, and that really will help support what I've put in so far. So can get a lot of black on my brush. I can get a bigger brush if I want, because this is where I can show off my brush work. So let's see if I can find the right brush for the job. I have these kind of beat up bristle flats, but this one's a nice big one. And let's clean up some of my palette here so I don't contaminate my shadow colors. Okay, I can spread this black out a little bit and go to town. Just got a touch of the Gamsol solvent on there to just loosen it up a little bit. Want the hairs in the brush to do a little bit of double duty to also mimic the hair on her head. Okay, let me see. So Jennifer says, how do you choose when to soften an edge and when to use a transitional color? Um, well, usually it's laziness that dictates that. The lazy way is just to use the brush to soften the edge. The probably the better way is to actually mix up the third color. It's a little more work, but it will get you a more, what's the word? Kind of more realistic, more committed, definite sort of brushstroke look. You're keeping all your brushstrokes in that sense, and so it is worth the time. I just, like I said, I get a little bit lazy, and I'm gonna come in with a little bit of light blue to get sort of their sweater that she has on underneath here. Not gonna spend a lot of time on it. Just want to get kind of an indication of it. Has a little bit of an edge, and then she looks like she has a pink shirt or something underneath that. Right here, kind of a rosy color. And then her hair is sweeping in underneath that, her chin. And then you see a little bit of her chest. It's really kind of a dark um, blackish red. I don't have her Adam's apple or her throat quite in the right place yet. I have to mix that color too. Greenish red, if that makes any sense. That's more kind of that olive color that I don't have. There we go. Okay, so I don't want to overwork it, but I just want a sense of that form there. Got a little bit of a darker shadow here. That pulls around. And then it makes me want to put in the hollow of her cheek a little bit darker. And then soften up that. Okay, and here's where I'm using the brush a little bit, dragging it around to kind of soften up those transitions a little bit. Okay, I do need to mix the color there that is going there though. And sometimes you'll see it. Sometimes the paint will look kind of dirty or messy because you've done too much dibbling and dabbling and not enough getting the right color on the paintbrush and putting it down. So that's what I okay. So I have a transitional color between this cheek and the hair. There is another color that's kind of greenish black, a little bit darker. That's too dark. That's about right. Okay, and then there probably is a little bit of that reflected light, even though you can't really see it that well in this the quality of this photo. But if I put that in subtly, then again that will also help um, turn that form. Have a little mistake there, but I might decide to keep that or not. It's distracting. Okay, so I'm gonna look. See, I have my brush standing up in my solvent. The thing I said I wasn't gonna do anymore, and there I am doing it. And I also need to pull out some clean paper towel. Okay, so let's get a little more of her hair in here. So, for those of you who want to know a little bit about marketing, I do almost all just social media marketing, and my channel that I focus on and the most, and it kind of makes sense, is Instagram because it's a highly visual social media platform, and it's where I have the most following. In terms of marketing, if I'm, it would be one thing if I'm selling courses. That's the right audience too, because it's mostly international artists looking to improve their skills. They're not generally the audience that's looking to buy paintings or commission portraits. I do get some of my commission work from Instagram, but that's starting to change a little bit. I'm getting more and more of my commissions from Etsy, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But the fact of the matter is, I have close to 30,000 followers on Instagram now, and of when you have such a large following, that means there are going to be groups within those groups that are sort of outside of that average. That they're not the 20-year-old art student from an emerging economy. They're maybe someone who has a little more means that appreciates the art or is a painter too and wants to commission a portrait. And so I have gotten some of my portrait commissions like that. Um, but at some point I wanted to be able to point some of that audience to kind of like a shopping cart or something if someone asked to buy a print or one of the paintings I had already done or commission a portrait. I wanted a way to be able to, without a lot of friction, to be able to find a shopping cart and make a payment, that kind of thing. And so I started looking around um, for some sort of shopping feature. And so I looked at the possibility of putting a shopping cart on just directly on my website, some plug-in or something like that, or third-party um, sort of thing that you just integrate to your website. And um, looking around a lot, I did come sort of land on Spotify. And the great thing about Spotify, at least the promise was that um, what was the promise? The promise was that you could put an item right in Instagram post, and that if someone clicked on it, if it were an item for sale, they would see a little sales tag, and if they clicked on it, it would open up a shopping cart where they could purchase it right there. And I thought, wow, that's great. That's like zero friction. They see it, they want it, they buy it. That's kind of what you want, as opposed to trying to figure out how to get someone off of Instagram onto some other platform, and then several clicks later, then they're putting an item in the cart, and then by the time they got there, that no sale was going to happen like that. It's just was going to be too many steps. And you know how Instagram is; they don't really give you too many links out um, to go somewhere else. It's there's a few places where you can put a hyperlink and um, well, like in stories, if you have over 10,000 followers, you can put a link in the story. If someone swipes up, they can go there, or you can put a link in the DM, so you can direct people there. But that's not a great place to try to sell to a large audience. Or you can um, promote posts or promote stories, or just run straight ads, and that's another way that Instagram actually allows you to click out of the platform. So with this Shopify, you have something called links that are shoppable links, and I think BigCommerce also has the same feature where you can put the link, you put a link right in your post, or you're essentially you're creating a listing or a sales item right in your post, and then they can um, shop that way. So so I try to get the Spotify to work, and to get that sort of shoppable post, you have to be approved by Instagram as a business channel, a business account. And I have a business account allows me to do things like see my insights, my analytics, and do other things. It is a business account, but Instagram wouldn't approve me as a business account to do shoppable links. And I don't know why that is. I thought maybe because I was censored for a while, because I was showing close up of people's faces, and their nudity detector was thinking that lips and mouth were genitalia of some kind, and not um, it was not understanding what it was that I was painting, because my audience wants to see my brushwork and close-ups of faces, eyes, mouth, and everything, and their filtering system would see it as an offensive post and would censor me. Essentially, it would show the post, but it would allow me to use any of the hashtags and some of the other features. And I figure partially because of that, it may have not have approved me as a business account that could have shoppable links. Anyway, it's all speculation. They say that there is some sort of appeal process. There really isn't. It just, at the end of the day, I had to lose a lot of my analytics by turning off my business account and turning it back on, and trying that way. In the end, I lost those analytics, and I still wasn't improved. So with all that frustration, and the way Shopify works is you pay a monthly subscription. It's the cheapest one is $30 a month, and it was going to be a long time before I got really enough prints and enough information posted and drive the market there, that I was going to have enough of sales to really pay for that $30 monthly fee. And I just kind of hate the way, kind of, even though it's not a huge amount of money, that's $300 a year. If you're not really selling anything on that channel, then it is kind of a waste. So then I started to look at Etsy, and Etsy has a different model where you pay very little. You pay 20 cents for a listing on your Shopify shop. It's called a shop. And then so you're paying 20 cents every time you list something, which is negligible. And then when you sell something, and I really don't understand this, people complain about how much the uh, the transaction cost is that Etsy charges you, but in total it's 5% compared to some other art sales platforms that are charging you 20, 30, 40%. They charge you 5%, and 2.9% of that is the credit card transaction cost. So out of that 5%, they're only getting 2% of the sale. That's really negligible, and it's only if you're selling a really high volume of things that you're spending more than you would be on paying a monthly subscription on Shopify. So for me, that I didn't really have a volume of sales yet, I just wanted to be able to build my channel. That was sort of a low cost way of getting in there. And just a quick thing about the fee that you pay. People say, "Oh, well, if you're selling a lot, you end up spending thousands of dollars in fees when you could just be paying hundreds of dollars." But what I'm finding is that there's a value of a marketing value from being on Etsy, that people are finding your work um, through, because it's a marketplace where you would have to drive through SEO and Google Ads and all kinds of things to your Shopify page or through your some social media audience. If you um, if you weren't able to drive that traffic, your channel would just be sitting there kind of collecting dust. And so the fact that you're part of this marketplace in Etsy is it has this huge benefit beyond the 2% that you're paying them. I don't understand the logic of saying, oh well, if I add up all the money that I'm paying Etsy, um, they're getting a lot more than if I move somewhere else. But what you don't realize is the marketing value, the search and promotion value that you have on being on Etsy. So I I'm sticking with Etsy, and what I'm finding for me is that on Etsy has more of my intended audience for commissioning portraits than on Instagram. I'm slowly building up my Facebook presence too, but again, it's not really the right audience. I think it's the right demographic, but the demographic that I'm reaching are more artists than potential buyers. I still don't know quite how to market the sketches that I've done, my oil sketches as practice over the last couple years. There's some beautiful paintings in there, but the idea of selling a portrait of somebody that a person doesn't know, selling it to them, like who is that person? Well, it's just a head study, but a lot of people they want they want to buy something they're familiar with, somebody they know, or they want to commission a painting generally. If you're doing portraiture work, they don't just want a study of somebody that is just sort of random. There are some exceptions. I know some artists that do very well marketing head studies and head portraits, like Jeffrey Watts and Malcolm Lipke, and there's many others that they can sell whatever head study they paint. I'm pretty sure that they can sell. John Lariva is another one that he puts up the work for auction as soon as he paints it, and I can see from his listings there's very little that's unsold there. I'm looking at this distance here in the nose. You see where this bit of white is here. It's so close to the ridge, and I have it pretty far away. So I have to do a little bit of measuring here. So that white is really over, so that means there's some um, aspect of the eye that I don't quite have right yet. So I am starting to get commissions on Etsy. It is actually accelerating quite a bit. I would be getting like one commission a month. And maybe part of it is the Christmas shopping season that I've gotten um, 6 or 7 new commissions in the last month or so. And um, one of them was out of a sale that I ran, a 2-day sale, because I just wanted to be able to. There was a little bit of time running out where I could do one last for Christmas commission in the United States, mailing domestically. And so I just ran a quick sale, and I did found someone who saw the sale, they saw the promotion. Etsy promoted it a little bit because they like it when you run a discount on your items. They let everyone who's liked that item and liked your channel, they let them know that you're running a sale, and so it does drive a bit of traffic. And the same day that I put up the sale, I got a sale. So um, so part of it is kind of understanding what's going to drive sales a little bit. Um, but I just think that I'm now getting enough traffic just by having enough listings and having enough likes, and I've also been promoting my not all of my items. I've been promoting just um, my commission, my portrait commission item, custom portrait from photo. It's called, and um, my other items, I have some prints, and I do have some. Um, I can't really talk tonight. Sorry. I have some prints, and I have some originals that I sell, but I don't really advertise those. I kind of feel like it's less likely people are going to buy those. And what people are looking for are more the commission, and I kind of feel like the quality of my work makes it stand out a little bit. So eventually, if people poke around enough and they look at enough listings, they're going to find my work. I'm not paying more than 15 cents for ads, for in search ads, and um, and I know that there's some other people who list for portraitures. They charge less to do a portrait, and they are willing to pay more for advertising. So overall, that's the work they're doing is less profitable. They have to do a much higher volume. I'm not willing to go there. I'm kind of sliding in the opposite direction, that eventually I'm going to raise my prices, and I'm hoping to pay a little bit less in advertising as time goes on. We'll see. I will end up paying less in advertising if I'm getting more commissions than I can paint. Then that doesn't really seem to make sense, unless it's more for building up for future sales or brand awareness, something like that. Then I will keep on advertising. I did look into the idea of advertising on Instagram, advertising on Facebook, and even, and I might do it still, is doing some AdWord ads. Um, but I did the advertising I did on Facebook, I didn't feel was highly effective because I had no way of predicting who was going to be that person who would be mildly interested in commissioning a portrait. I mean, I could go after high net worth individuals, but of those high net worth individuals, there's millions of them. Um, how do I know who would be interested in a portrait? So I could filter out for people who are interested in museums or interested in country clubs and travel and leisure, the indicators that they had more disposable income. But um, the fact of the matter is that I could pay a lot for those CPMs, um, cost per thousand essentially, but not really know which part of that audience was my intended audience, my most likely buyer. And then, except, so the same idea, if I look at advertising on Etsy, I know that if someone put in the search term custom portrait, um, they're not looking to learn how to paint a portrait, or if they're putting in portrait, they're not learning, they're looking to buy a portrait. So there already is a high level of qualification of someone who's searching that term, that what they're looking for is to commission a portrait. And so that has been so far my best tactic in terms of, or best strategy in terms of going after advertising for my intended clientele. And so that seems to be working so far. I'm sticking with it. It wasn't working a few months ago, but now it is, because I've spent the time and I've built up the the channel. I have social credibility on other social media channels. I have videos posted, so if someone wants to see me painting in action, they actually can see how I paint. Right here, I'm going to do a quick brush stroke. This is, I don't see in the painting
I don't see where this line is following the form, but I do want to emphasize the form, so I want to make sure that brushstroke is having that right curve that follows the form. I do want to get that dark enough so it doesn't sit out quite so much. That's sort of that light pink. Let's see if I can overcompensate a little bit for being too light right there. There we go. Okay. So you see how I'm really following that form there, whereas what was in the source of the photo isn't so much. Let's get that darker red here, just thinly. Okay, went a little bit too extreme there. And that comes up a little. Great. So yeah, so that's been sort of my most current marketing foray is working with Etsy and Instagram. Well, it's where I'm getting most of my commissions. Um, okay, so I want to pull her chin out just a little bit. The line of the chin is just off a little. So if I pull to get that greenish gray in there to knock back that other color. Having a hard time going dark enough here, so I'm just going to throw in a little bit more black to get there. Okay, and I'm going to pull a little more of that orange red over on her chin. Okay, that's looking good. And then I can put this little bit of a reflected light back in that edge, maybe a little subtler. So I'm going to carve back into it with black. Okay, that's good. And I can pay attention to that shadow underneath the nose does swing out further. I got a little bit too much green in here, not a pure green. Okay. How's that looking? A little bit better, I think. Okay, so starting to get the likeness, getting the forms to read. Keep on moving in that direction. There's a lot of greens in the light part of the hair there. Blues and greens, it's reflecting off the sky, so it's pulling in the blues of the sky essentially into her hair. I can really go quite green there and still have it read correctly. And then the same here, I can have a lot of green in here, especially off all that orange. That green just really kind of pops there. And that kind of shifts color a little bit, right? There's a little bit more orangers, reds in here, darker, not that light. Too dark. Okay. Gone to sort of both sides of that one. Yeah, that's a little better. So you see it's shifting color, but not really shifting value. Okay, and I want to pull in a little bit of the blue of her sweater up in here too. Okay, I'm getting really close here actually. I don't want to overwork it, so um, again, it's coming in with a loaded brush to make sure that I'm really coming down with enough paint and not just blending and moving color around, but really
painting, doing the alla prima the way it's really meant to be done. Not be so lazy and just blend everything together. Just really dig in there and get it, you know. Okay. So now I can look back and forth. I'm like very close here. I can see where some colors or values or shapes or placement is really off. This was too dark in here. And then it shifts to orange right in here. Not quite that subtle a change, but close to it. So I have to come back and reassert that color. Okay. So let me see. Everything's still working. So I'm gonna try to wrap it up pretty quickly here. If I'm really close, I think I'm not gonna finish it tonight, but or who knows? I may look at it later and decide it's done. But this is a commission, so I want to make sure that I'm sort of checking off all the likeness and style boxes. Okay, let's get some of these lights here, make sure they're curving in the right direction. That blue in there is just really nice, so I'm going to leave that. Maybe just a little softer right there. Oops. There. Now I've ruined it. I've ruined it. So nice. Oh well. See if I can get something back that's not the same, but okay, there we go. Close to being back to where it was. And I'm going to go thicker here. Great. Okay, that's looking good. Okay, and I'm getting a little bit of her scalp here through how her hair is pulled. Right there. Now I don't have to put all these kind of things in. I can just decide to edit. But let's see if I can get it to read properly. Okay. So let's try to clean up some areas that I got a little sloppy with the dabbling. Come in with bigger strokes, just simplifying areas. Yep. Again, under the lower side of the cheek and do the same thing. I want that to be lighter. Not just lighter, but rosy. Get a little bit of that rose color in there. So you see how I'm like using the chisel brush to do kind of chop longer strokes if I can. Okay, this is sort of, I need an in-between color right here. I can put another one right next to it. There we go. So I think I need the corner of that eye just to be a tad higher. So this is where I'm starting to look back and forth and seeing where things need adjusting. Orange, white. Okay, that was good. Okay, that was a little bit too far away from my intended target. Okay, that's better. Sorry, I keep on bumping the phone here. It's probably giving you guys a little bit of vertigo. Okay, want to soften up these forms right in here. The shadow of the cheek. I have it a little bit too dark, the shadow, so I can lighten that up too. But it'd be nice if I have just one nice, confident brushstroke there, and that goes from here all the way down. If I managed to make it the right color, that would have been really great. Sort of an orange. Okay, so um, okay, and still comparison, doing little um, corrections, trying to make sure that I'm simplifying as I go and not making it more complicated. The worst is if you have painted very directly and you get it to a certain point and then you just grab a little brush and you kind of make it all look, I don't know, unconfident, if that's the right word. So the trick is to really focus on making sure that the brushwork that you put down is with a larger brush, you're putting down new paint each time, and um, you're painting with intent. Okay, and there is this greenish, grayish red here, in here. This is the underside of a form. I try to follow the form there. Really wish I had olive green, but I'll just make something up that looks like it. There we go. And if I mix my orange with that, then I'm getting that other color that I wanted. Because I want to fill this part in again. Okay, I thought I softened up this transition here on the side of the nose, but it's just not looking very soft anymore. Let's pull that brush out of my solvent, bad habits. And let's see if I can soften up that transition on the side of the nose again. It's like a little, it just has a touch of orange and a touch of white, and that's about it. Yep, that's too dark. So let's take another stab at it. Using up a lot of white mixing this. And that's too light. Okay, now I know sort of the bracket of where it is I'm trying to go. Better. Okay. Still not quite happy with the tip of the nose. Getting there eventually, I'll get there. Oh, for goodness sake. Okay. Came in a lot too strong on that brushstroke. Okay, this is where I'm starting to squint a lot more because that helps me soften a lot of those transitions so I can see what the overall effect is. Nose is just driving me crazy. I can't get it quite right. Okay. Um, it's 11:20. I'm pretty close here. I'm just going to work for 10 more minutes, try not to ruin it, and decide whether it's actually done or not. Um, I mean, the likeness is pretty close, and the brushstrokes are nice and loose. I need a little more information in her hair, I think. Mostly in the darks. Okay, and I do need to clean up the eyes quite a bit. That's the eyes are my focal point. I want to make sure those are right. I'm gonna have to whip out my smaller brush, the thing that I really don't want to do so much. Okay, let's look for a detail brush I haven't destroyed yet. Oh, and look, that ear is totally unacceptable. But that isn't the brush I want to do the ear with. So I'm going to hold two brushes at the same time. Let's see if I can get this done quickly. I'm going to put in a lot of purple, carve a little bit more with the black. I really want this ear to push back in space, so I'm just going to knock it back to begin with. Can always come back in with the cleaner color on top. Although I think purpley whitish gray is what I'm looking for. Okay, maybe good enough for now. Oh, I said I was going to put that diamond stud in. Okay, let's get a little more realism here on this ear. That's not looking too bad, just for a few whacks at it. Let's clean that up a little. Okay, so to get this diamond stud here, I'm just going to put down some black where it is approximately, and then I'm just going to put some white or a tint right on top. And then I really want it to be quite white like that. Okay, so then I want to make sure I have a little bit of shadow underneath it so that and maybe I go like darker and redder with well, that wasn't neither darker nor redder. Let's try that again. Okay, that's good. Let's just put a little line here where separate the lobe from the hair that's coming behind it. Great. Okay. And let's define the tip of the nose a little bit better. Let's bring this light down further. Great. Okay, I see I'm running on low battery. That means that I have 20% left on my phone. And so the power is running out, but I'm going to make it here for my 5 more minutes. So I really want to clean up the any messy brushwork here that I have. Want to follow the form with the strokes as much as I can. That's not dark enough in that spot, but let's try it again. Then a cleaner orange, kind of on the top of this cheek. Try that again. There we go, that's the right color. Okay, I've got a little bit of a channel here in that groove. I should have the lower eyelid coming down just a little bit lower. So now this is the right distance between that nostril and the lower eyelid. Okay, a little bit softer transition there. Okay, I made the tip of her nose definitely a little bit too long, so let's see if I can fix that quickly. In all my attempts to make it the right shape, I was just pushing it further and further down each time. Okay, I got a little quiet here. Just getting into my own head a little bit. Painting is really my zen space. I mean, I end up painting a lot between 10 o'clock at night and 2 in the morning. Getting it like 4 hours in at some nights is the only time I can really do it. And and I don't get as much sleep as I should. But there's something about the painting too. The process of painting for me, it's very relaxing, and I can do it for long periods of time without breaks. Let's fix the tip of her nose. Eventually gonna get there because it doesn't come down that low, isn't quite as broad as I have it. Something more like that. I think that's pretty close. Okay. So let's mix a lot of color because I need to have color on my brush for this to work now. Okay. Great, great. That's all looking good. Okay. More eyelid here. Okay. Getting there, getting there. Okay, so I need to do quite a bit of refining for this. If it weren't a portrait commission, I'd probably just leave it just the way it is. But I do want to fix some of the strange transitions that are in her face and get them to read better. And um, I don't think I can do it tonight live and everything. I really do have to slow down and look and sort of adjust things very slowly, one thing at a time. It's not an interesting thing to watch, and so I am going to call it. I do want to say before I go is thank you all for watching. If I do this every Tuesday night, it does happen that Christmas and New Year's Day are both on Tuesdays, and I'm probably, given the number of commissions that I have to complete, I may skip doing the demo altogether on those 2 days. So it may be 3 weeks to a month off from doing the demo, but I haven't decided yet. If you want notice of when I'm going live or when I post a new video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the notification button, and that way you'll be notified as soon as I do post that video. Thank you all for joining me tonight, and I will see you next week. Good night.